In this session, we are going to discuss about another set of UI elements: drop down by key, drop down by index, radio button group by key, and radio button group by index. By seeing, a drop down by key and drop down by index, both will suffice the same requirement, wherein we can use both of these UI elements to display a drop down values, to display a list values in WebDynpro ABAP application. But why do we have two different UI elements? Okay, so we are going to discuss about the differences today, and similarly radio button group by key and radio button group by index, both UI elements are used to display the radio buttons in WebDynpro ABAP application. But we are going to discuss about why do we have two different UI elements. Okay, so let me just go to SAP screen, SCIT. Okay, yes, SCIT transaction code. Now let me just create. See, first let me tell you the difference between drop down by key and drop down by index. See, drop down by key is used to populate the static values. Okay, so what I mean by static values is which will not be changed during runtime. Okay, which will not be changed during runtime. Let's say for example true or false. Okay, for particular selection there can be only two values possible uh, throughout the WebDynpro application, that is yes or no, or true or false. So in such cases, uh, you can choose the drop down by key so that the fixed values will be displayed. Okay, so drop down by key UI element is used to populate the static values in static drop down values in WebDynpro web application. Okay, now drop down by index. Drop down by index is used to populate the dynamic drop down values during runtime in the WebDynpro ABAP application. Let's say for example dynamic drop down values. What is mean by dynamic drop down values? Let's say for example I have two different drop downs, wherein in the first drop down I have country codes, and in the second drop down I'm going to display the states. Okay, so depending on the first drop down selection, in the second drop down I will have the states of first drop down country will be displayed accordingly. So in such scenarios wherein a dynamic values to be displayed in the second drop down based on the first drop down, we can use the drop down by index UI element. Okay, so this is a real time example, and as a developer when you are working in WebDynpro ABAP project, you should be able to differentiate and understand in which scenario you should go for drop down by key, and in which scenario you should choose the drop down by index UI element, so that the expected behavior should be achieved. Okay, so this is what an example. So drop down by key UI element is used to populate the static values. So static values will not be changed across the lifetime of the WebDynpro web application, but dynamic values are changed in between the WebDynpro web application. Okay, application execution. Okay, now this is first example. Now second example is, if you use the drop down by key UI element, values can be displayed from the domain fixed values. Okay, so in domain you can define the fixed values. So for domain will be assigned to data element. So when you are creating a context node and context attribute, create a context attribute with reference to data element, so that the data element has domain wherein all the fixed values of the domain will be displayed in the drop down by key UI element. But in case of drop down by index, although you take the context attribute which has fixed values, they are not displayed in the drop down by index. So fixed values concept will not work for drop down by index. But if you take the drop down by key UI element, fixed values will be displayed automatically in the drop down. But in case of drop down by index, if the fixed values are not displayed, then how do you populate the drop down values? You have to write some code. Okay, so this is the third difference. In case of drop down by key, you can populate the values in drop down by key UI element either through code are from fixed values. But in case of drop down by index, fixed values cannot help in drop down by index. So you will have to write some code, you will have to write some logic to populate the drop down values into the drop down by index UI element. Okay, now fourth difference is, in case of drop down by key UI element, context node should have cardinality 0 to 1 or 1 to 1. Okay, but in case of drop down by index UI element, cardinality should be 0 to n or 1 to n. Okay, so these are the differences, and in most of the interviews, interviewer will ask this question: what is the difference between drop down by key and drop down by index? And similarly, interviewer might ask difference between radio button group by key and radio button group by index. But differences for radio button group by key and radio button by index are similar to drop down by key and drop down by index. Okay, so the only thing is key and index, this is the difference. Okay, now let us see these differences in the WebDynpro development. Okay, now let me just create some view. Click on create, v underscore drop down ddk and ddi, drop down by key and drop down by index. Okay, click save. Now view has been created. Okay, now here I am going to design this screen with a drop down by key and drop down by index. Now let me show you the difference. I'm just finding a field wherein we have fixed values defined. Okay, yes, here we have fixed values defined, so I can use this data element. Okay, which data element? VB type. Okay, SD document category. Now I go to here, I go to context. Either you can create a context in view controller or component controller. If you create a context node in component controller, that becomes the global. If you create a context node in view controller, that becomes the local. Okay, so anyway, just to explain you, I'm creating context node in local controller only. Okay, ddk underscore vb type. Okay, dictionary structure is not required. Okay, cardinality 1 to 1, selection 0 to 1, just leave them as it is. Click OK. Now right click on it, create context attribute. Okay, vb type, vbak hyphen vb type. Okay, now click OK. Okay, now context node and context attribute has been created. Now this is the first step. Whenever you design the screen, the best practice is to make sure the required context node and context attributes are in place. Okay, now this is the first step. So the required, I mean, as we do in the ABAP coding, in ABAP coding also, what we do, we make sure that the data declarations are there, and then if there is no data declaration, but if you are trying to use the particular variable or particular internal table, then anyway system will throw an error message. So similarly here also in the WebDynpro ABAP code, so here similar to data declarations, here context is the data repository. So we have to make sure that the context is created first and then go to the layout. So this is the layout is the second step. Now here I'm just trying to design the screen. Let me just design the screen. Let me just select the matrix layout, and now let me select the transparent container, tco underscore ddk transparent container, and within this transparent container, here what I'm going to do is I'm going to create group UI element, group UI element. Okay, so group UI element. So group UI element is used to combine multiple UI elements. Okay, similar to transparent container only. It's a container which will hold the multiple UI elements. Okay, similarly group UI element also can be used to combine multiple UI elements, but only difference between transparent container and group is the look and feel of the group UI element and transparent container will be different. Okay, if it is a transparent container, everything is transparent, you don't see anything, you just see as is normal screen only. But if it is group, so group will have additional properties wherein you can change the look and feel of the UI. Okay, so I have created a UI. So here this is the, I can select the matrix layout again. Okay, now what I'm going to do is, here you see caption has been created by default, so I can specify the text. This is drop down by key UI element. Okay, now you see group header has come. Now under this group I am going to design the screen. Okay, right click on it, create container form, select this. Okay, now not input field. Okay, here it is okay, fine, but here cell editor of table column. Okay, so here you here it is always automatically display the drop down by key. See, WebDynpro ABAP framework will determine if the data element domain has fixed values, then in the WebDynpro ABAP the cell editor would automatically considered as drop down by key. If you want, you can change it, you can change to input field or whatever you want. Whatever you want, you can change this. Okay, like this, but this is what required for us, so we are also selecting drop down by key only. Okay, now click OK. Now screen design has been done. Okay, now see values had automatically come. Now just save it and activate it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another window. Now create another WebDynpro application. Click OK. So here specify the interface view name. See, w underscore dropdown has not come because w underscore dropdown is still not yet activated. So that is why in the meanwhile just select this. Okay, we can change later. But before to that, let me just activate this window so that it will be displayed in the application. Yeah, now here I'll change now. Now if you just press F4, it will be displayed because it is activated. Now everything is same. So now just now execute it. Now you will see the output, the screen design that we had done in the v underscore drop down view. Okay, now it is not displayed. Why? Because we have not embedded a view within a window. Okay, see here we have not embedded a. Now go to change mode. Okay, now go to change mode, right click on it and click on embed view. Press F4. Now select the v underscore drop down view. Okay, now save it, activate it. Okay, now if you refresh the application, now it should be displayed. Yes, see all the values had automatically come, okay, as drop down. You see, these are the, see, these values you cannot change it now, okay, because they are displayed, they are static values, you cannot change them now, okay. You can see them, okay, right, like this, okay. You can choose whatever you want it, you can choose whatever you want it, okay, like this. So this is what the drop down by key UI element, this is drop down by key UI element, okay. So now we will see drop down by index, how to achieve the drop down by index. Now let me just show you once again drop down by key. In case of drop down by key, what are the things? Drop down by key UI element is used only when we about to display the static values. When we want to display the static values, then we will use the drop down by key UI element. And second one is the fixed values of the domain are directly displayed in case of drop down by key, okay. This is the second difference. Now the third difference is we don't have to write any explicit coding to populate the drop down values in drop down by key UI element. They are displayed automatically if there are any values in the domain, okay. Now the fourth difference is context node cardinality can be 0 to 1 or 1 to 1, okay. Now in this scenario we have taken the cardinality 1 to 1, okay. Now these are the differences. Now let me just create another context node to work with the drop down by index node, okay. ddi underscore let's say something is, I can choose same, okay. I can choose same, I'll show you now, okay. ddi underscore vbtyp, okay. Now cardinality should be 0 to n or 1 to n, okay. Sorry, dictionary structure nothing, okay. Now click ok. Now right click on it and same create context attribute vbtyp vbak hyphen vbtyp. So I'm just taking the same table, same field which has fixed values, okay. But I'm going to bind this context node to drop down by key UI element. So now although there are fixed values defined in the domain, they are not displayed in case of drop down by index, okay. So now create container form, select this. Now drop down by key is displayed automatically, you choose drop down by index here, okay. Now click ok, okay. One second, huh? Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another group underscore ddi group, okay. For this I'll select matrix layout and layout data as matrix head data, so that it will be displayed in the new line. Now I'm going to move all these into this group, just do drag and drop, okay. Just do drag and drop. Now I'll specify the caption also, this is drop down by index UI element, okay. Okay, now done. Save and activate it. Now see, now let me just show you once again. This context node is assigned to drop down by key, and this has context attribute referring to vback hyphen vb type, and this context node is assigned to drop down by index, it has cardinality 0 to n, okay, and vb type is same, okay. Both context nodes are referring to the same type. Now let me just execute the WebDynpro application. See, it is not displayed anything, it is displayed. So it means, so the differences that I've told you are working now. So this is drop down by key UI element. So fixed values are displayed automatically, but here I have used the same type, but fixed values are not displayed in case of drop down by index. So what we have to do, since there are no values, drop down is displayed, drop down is disabled. So we will have to populate the drop down values now, so that it will be enabled. Okay, now I can use the supply function functionality, populate DDI. I can use the supply function to populate the drop down values into the context node. Okay, now I can double click here. It will take it. There will be some code generated. Yes. So whenever you create a supply function, some code will be generated. So you can just uncomment them depending on your requirement, and you can use accordingly. Okay. Now see. Okay, this is referring to the parent, so I don't want any parent related. Just comment it. Okay, now here, come here, and here I'll uncomment it, and this. Okay, right. Okay, now here, see, this is internal table declaration, this is work area declaration, and here I am binding the direct node to bind table. Using the bind underscore table, I can bind multiple records here. Okay, now let me show you how to populate the records. Same normal ABAP programming only. Control C. Okay, what is the field name? VBTYP. Okay, so is equal to let's say A, let's say Bharat, append to LT. Okay, similarly Marcus, and say Martin, or say Jorg. Okay, and say Yuan. Okay, right. Now let me just activate it. Okay, now I have appended to internal table, and this internal table is passed to bind underscore table method. Okay, now if I keep a breakpoint here, and if I refresh the application again, see, LT underscore DD underscore VB type has 4 records. Okay, now but the reason is here, see, it took only one character, because the type that we have chosen has length one character only. Okay, it has length one character only, VB type. Okay, char 1. Okay, so that is why it is considering only one character length. So now what I have to do, but let me show you here. After execution of bind table, press F8. Now you go to application. Now this is enabled. You see, Bharat, Marcus, Jorg, Yuan. Okay, so but now in order to display the complete values, now we should change the type. Okay, so now here what I do, I will change this char 10. Okay, char 20. Now save it and activate it. Okay, now let me just refresh this application again. Now you will see come all the values, the complete text. Now let me just remove this breakpoint and let me just activate it. You see now, Bharat, Marcus, Jog, Yuan. So this is what. Now here it is the label is displayed as char 20, but if you because we have taken the data element as standard data element char 20, so there is no field label specified, so it is displaying as char 20 only. So now what I can do, I can change the label name, label text. Here I can change the, so this is the label UI element, label UI element, and I can change the text. Okay, document category. Okay, document category. You see, it has been changed text. Save it and activate it. Now just refresh this. See, document category has come. So like this, you can populate the drop down values into drop down by index UI element. Okay, so this is what. Now we know how to populate the drop down values into drop down by key and how to populate the drop down values into drop down by index. But now how to how to read the value from drop down by key, the selected value from the drop down by key or the selected value from the drop down by index, how to read that. Now let me do that. Okay, now I'm going to create one button. I'm going to place one button, btn underscore ddk button. Okay, here also I'll place one. No, let me just name this. Okay, okay, get selected value, ddk value, get selected ddk value. Now let me create an on action for this. Get ddk selected. Okay, now click OK. Now here also I'll create one button, insert element, ddi, sorry, btn underscore ddi button. Okay, so for this also I should name it get selected tdi value. Okay, I should create an on action for this. Get ddi selected. Okay, now I have created buttons for drop down by key and drop down by index also. Now I should write the required code to read the selected value from the drop down by key and read the selected value from drop down by index. Now let me just execute the application and show you. Okay, now I have the button behind the drop down by key and button beside the drop down by index. Okay, now here I'll select some value, accounting document, and click on get selected ddk value. So now when I click on get selected ddk value, I am interested to read the selected value in the drop down by key, and here also, so likewise I can select any value from the drop down by index, and when I click on get selected ddi value, so now I should be able to read the selected value from the drop down by index UI element. So now in order to achieve this requirement, I should write the required code in this on action. Okay, now let me just go to on action and then write the required code. Okay, so this is get ddk selected. Okay, as discussed in the earlier session, how to read the data from context. Okay, so when values, let's say once again, see here we are selecting some value. Okay, revenue recognition or revenue recognition new view, everything you enter, whatever user entered or whatever user see the data, this data is actually stored in the context. The data which you see in the application is behind the screen is actually stored in the context node or context attribute in terms of elements. Okay, now we should read the data from context node. Okay, so once again I'm just going here. Yeah, here I have to write the required code to read the data from context attribute. Okay, so here the data gets stored in the context attribute, so we should read the data from context attribute. Now click on WebDynpro code wizard. See, here I am reading. I should select the read radio button because I am trying to read the data from context attribute. Okay, see DDK. Okay, DDK. So code has been generated. This is reference variable type ref2 node, and then this is element, as I discussed in the earlier last session. Okay, whenever we are trying to read the attribute value, first we should know the node instance, and once we have the node instance, then get the element instance, and within that element read some particular attribute. Okay, so here we have the work area and here we have variable. Okay, now see, get, we use the get child node method, okay, to get the node instance, and get element to get the element instance. Here we use the get attribute method to read the specific attribute value by exporting the attribute name and importing the variable. Okay, now we will have the data in lv underscore vb type. Now let me just activate it. Similarly, we should also write the required code in on action ddi selected. Okay, you see this is ddk selected and ddi selected. Now here also I should write the similar code. Go to WebDynpro code wizard, read context VB type, this one DDI VB type. Okay, now same code has been generated. Here also get attribute. Now let me just activate it and keep a breakpoint in both the places and we'll show you. Okay, here keep a breakpoint and go to DDK also, keep a breakpoint. Okay, here also keep a breakpoint, and let me open the application and refresh this. Okay, now select some value, let's say accounting document. Okay, I'm selecting accounting document. Let me go to dictionary VB type, and okay, here you see fixed value, so you will see some key and text has been displayed here. Okay, you have a in the sense inquiry, b in the sense like quotation. Now in such scenarios you will get to see this short description in the application, but behind the screen it gets stored in terms of abcd, this fixed values. Okay, now I'll show you here. Now I'm just clicking on what is accounting document temporary here. What is accounting document temporary? Now let me just show you accounting document temporary. Yes, this plus symbol. Okay, accounting document temporary in the sense like plus symbol. So now when I click on this, I'll go to debugging. There I should get the value plus. Okay, I should get the value plus. So it is debugging now. lv underscore vb type is empty now. Now press F6, you'll get this plus. Okay, so what is plus? Accounting document temporary. So this is what plus accounting document temporary. So now like this you can read the selected value from the drop down. Okay, now here so get selected DDI value. Now I will choose jorg. Now get selected DDI value. Now here since there is no key assigned, here you will get to see only direct text. Okay, VB type, see there is no text because this is not executed. Now press F6, you see jorg, direct text has been displayed here. Now if you want to deal with keys, okay, now what you can do is I'll tell you that also. Okay, go to context. Here you create another context attribute, VB type underscore key. Okay, char1. Okay, char1 or char2, it's up to you, it's up to your requirement. Okay, now what I will do here, since I already have supply function created for it, I just have to change the supply function. Okay, I just go to populate underscore DDI supply function, and here I will add another attribute. Okay, VB type underscore key. Okay, this is the another context attribute name. So even if I enter Bharat, since the length of the VB type underscore key context attribute is 1, so you will get only one. System itself will consider the first character, the remaining all truncated. Okay, so we don't have to worry about that. Now let me just same again for all the records. Okay, VB type underscore key. Let me do the same for all. Okay, now done. Now activate it. Now refresh this application. Now here also you will see only text only, but behind the screen you will also have key. Now when I click on get select, now here I will have to change the code. Go to method list, on action DDI selected. Here I am reading VB type value, and if I am interested I can write the VB type key of value also. Okay, here now here in place of exporting parameter I will pass the context attribute name. Okay, now here underscore key I should have the data declaration here. Okay, now done. Now activate it. So anyway I have already breakpoint here, so let me just activate the WebDynpro application. And now here I'll select Marcus, get selected DDI value. It's not going to debugging. Okay, now let me just remove the breakpoint and just put the breakpoint again. Okay, refresh the application. Now let's say select Georg, get selected DDI value. It going to debugging. Now LV underscore VB type, press F6. So what is LV underscore VB type Georg? Now what is this? So this is not executed, so it is empty now. Press F6. Now see J has come. So now it is similar to drop down by key only. Okay, so here we have key, here we have text. Okay, now so like this, if you want you can create two different context attributes and assign the values and read the values as per your need. Okay, so this is what the difference between drop down by key and drop down by index. Now we will see working with radio button group by key and radio button group by index UI elements. Now and see let me tell you the difference between drop down by key and drop down by index once again. This is most important because people get when working in real time environment, they mostly get confused in which scenarios I should use the drop down by key and which scenarios I should make use of the drop down by index. Just clear difference. If you are going to display the fixed values, static values, then you can go for drop down by key. And wherever you have a dynamic values to be displayed, depending on the first drop down selection, second drop down will always data will always vary. In such cases you can create the drop, you can take care of drop down by index UI element. Okay, so let me go to the radio button group by key and radio button group by index. Now in case of radio button group by key and radio button group by index, also both same differences, but let me repeat once again. Radio button group by key UI element is used only when we want to display fixed number of radio buttons. Okay, it's fixed number of radio buttons. It is similar to again drop down by key only. I mean, like, if you have context attribute created with reference to some data element, and data element has domain has fixed values defined. So let's say, for example, if particular domain has three fixed values defined, so those three values will come as radio buttons, okay, in the radio button group by key. In case of radio button group by index, although the context attribute is referring to data element and domain with fixed values, those fixed values will not be displayed as radio buttons in case of radio button group by index. So in order to display the radio buttons, we will have to write some code to populate the radio button in case of radio button group by index UI element. Okay, so I'll just read once again: radio button group by key and radio button group by index. In case of radio button group by key, stat in order to display static values, static radio buttons, we will use the radio button group by key. In case of radio button group by index, to populate the dynamic runtime radio number of radio buttons, we use the radio button group by index. Second difference is fixed values can be directly populated as radio buttons. Third difference is cardinality should be, we don't have to write any code to populate the radio buttons in case of radio button group by key. Fourth difference is cardinality can be 0 to 1 or 1 to 1. Now right side, radio button group by index, to populate the dynamic values. Second difference is static values, fixed values will not be displayed in case of radio button group by index. We will have to write some code to populate the radio button group by indexes. Fourth difference is cardinality can be 0 to n or 1 to n. Okay, so now let me just design the radio button group by key and radio button group by index. Go to views, create another view, v underscore radio button. Okay, here also I'll create the context again, local context only, rbk. I'll not specify any dictionary structure. Cardinality 1 to 1, just leave as it is, click OK. Now I am taking the same type, okay, rbk underscore vbtyp. So vbtyp, vbak hyphen vbtyp. I am just referring the same data element again. Click OK. Now click save. Go to layout. Right click on root UI element container. Create group underscore rbk group UI element. Okay. Set the root UI element container as matrix layout. Now select this also as matrix layout. Specify the caption. Okay, now design the screen. Create container form, context, this one. Now select it as radio button. Okay, here we don't get the radio button option, so what we have to do is we have to see, we have here radio button also, but this radio button is used in case of displaying a radio button in table UIL table. Okay, so just let me right click on it, click on insert element. Now here it will be displayed. Okay, just specify the ID rbk underscore vbtyp. Okay, here we have total 3 different UI elements for displaying a radio button. But here radio button by key, group by key, or radio button group by index are used if you are displaying a individual radio buttons. But this radio button option, radio button UI element is used in case of displaying a radio buttons in table UI element, table. Okay, as a column in table, if you want to display radio button, then you can use the radio button. Okay, now we are going to deal with this radio button group by key. Select this and click OK. Okay, now here we have to do the explicit binding. Okay, selected key, click here, select this context attribute. Now you see, just activate it. Now let me just create another window, w underscore r radio button, click OK, just activate it. Embed the view, save and activate. Now create WebDynpro application. Specify the interface view, plug name default, save, local object. Now execute it. Okay, now see how many radio buttons are displayed. As many as fixed values are there in the domain, so they are all displayed as radio buttons. You see what is the difference between a radio button and checkbox? In case of radio button, you can select only one option at a time. Okay, see, I have many number of radio buttons at a time. I can choose only one radio button. Okay, so that is what the radio button group. Okay, out of the entire group, I can choose only one radio button at a time. So this is a real time example is where you can have only one option for there are, for each question there are 4 multiple choice displayed, but out of those 4 multiple choice only one of them is correct. So you should be able to choose only one answer out of them, out of those 4. But see, some kind of aptitude test or some kind of competitive exams, there are few exams wherein for each question there could be more than one answer. So in such cases, using checkbox is a relevant option. Okay, so this is a real-time example to differentiate radio buttons and checkboxes. Okay, checkboxes we will see in the later sessions. So this is what the radio button group by key UI element. So static values are displayed as radio buttons. In case of radio button group by key, they are static always, they cannot be changed throughout the application. Okay, now this is what the radio button group by key. Now just to show you the difference again, now what I will do, I'll change the type. Okay, I'll change the type. Now in place of this, I will change the type to boolean. Okay, boolean. So boolean is a standard data element which has only two values possible, true or false. Okay, now let me just execute the application. Now you will see. Okay, one second, I'll open the another application. Test. See, true or false or unknown. Okay, now I will show you. I'll take you to the domain data element first. Here say boolean. Here I'll show you display boolean value range. See, true or false or unknown, fixed values. Okay, value range, fixed values. So that is why you will get to see only 3 options in the output. See this difference between these two, this one and this one. Okay, now let's work with radio button group by index. Now create another context node, RBI, and this should be 0 to n. Click OK. Now create context attribute, RBI underscore VBTYP char 20, or you can say VBTYP. There is no difference. Okay, now go to layout. Now create another group. Specify the caption. This is radio button group by index UI element. Okay, now select it as matrix layout and then choose the layout data as matrix head data. Okay, now save it. Okay, let us design the screen. Right click on this group UI element and click on insert element, RBI underscore VB type. Okay, radio button group by index. Okay, select this and click OK. Now you see by default 3 radio buttons are selected. Okay, but three radio buttons are displayed, but they are just displayed like that. But when you populate the values depending on the number of elements, their number of radio buttons are displayed in the output. Okay, now we have to do the explicit context binding here, context obligatory binding, so we will have to do it. Now select this RBI underscore VB type. Okay, just save it. And then now here also, in case of drop down by indexes, again you can populate the radio button group by index. You can populate the values using the supply function. Go to context. So here I can create a supply function, populate RBI. Okay, now double click on it. There will be some code generated already, so just uncomment the required code and just uncomment the required code. Okay, so here I'll just copy it from there. I'll copy it from here, populate DDI, home, populate RBI. Here I'll just, okay, I don't have key, so I can delete it. So say ls underscore RBI. Okay, so what is the RBI underscore VBTYP? Okay, RBI underscore VBTYP. Okay, now select this and then just copy paste. Okay, done. Now activate it. Now execute the WebDynpro application and see the output. Yes, now you see I have four radio buttons are displayed. Okay, now what I will do, I can populate one more value. Okay, say Thomas, Control S. Now refresh this. Now you see Thomas has been displayed. So likewise, if you need more number of radio buttons, you will have to populate them by writing the code. So this is what the radio button group by index UI element. So now let me just show you in the PPT. See, this is radio button group by key and drop down by group by key. So the differences are same for drop down by key and drop down by index, and radio button group by key and radio button group by index. What it is saying, radio button group by key or drop down by group by key, drop down by key. This UI element is used to display static drop down values or fixed number of radio buttons. Okay, so as we discussed, elements will be auto displayed if domain has fixed values maintained. Context attribute is referring to data element, domain and fixed values. When this UI element is used, there will be no option selected in the radio button list by default until you assign some default value. Okay, here you can assign, out of those 4 radio buttons or 10 drop down values, when you launch the application, if you want to display some value to be defaulted, then you can display it as default. See here, go to context. Let's say here you will see some default value option. You see some default value option. Okay, so like this you can say, if you say plus here, okay, if you say plus here, enter a valid value. Okay, here it is not considering. Okay, it is boolean. Okay, if you say, you can say x, you can say x. When you say x, true will be selected default. Okay, okay, now if you just go here, see currently it is unknown. Now if I just refresh the application, you see true has been selected by default. Okay, like this. Okay, so you can just default the value, and cardinality of node should be 0 to 1 or 1 to 1. Creation of a node in WebDynpro is not required. Attribute is sufficient. This is one more thing. Okay, here in case of drop down by keys or radio button group by keys, you don't have to create a node. Okay, see, let me show you that. You can, let me show you that also. Okay, here in the radio buttons itself are drop downs. Okay, so here I'll create a context attribute, only context attribute. I can create only context attribute, vbtyp. Okay, vbtyp. Click OK. I don't have context node here. I'll go to layout and I'll create here only. I'll create some element. Okay, ddk underscore vbtyp. Okay, drop down by key. Okay, now here I will say I'll do the explicit binding. Okay, click here and I can choose the context attribute. Okay, now save it and activate it. Now you will execute the application. Okay, this one. Okay, now you see. Okay, let it be. I'll just open the new application, drop down, test. Okay, now you see I have drop down by key values are displayed. I already had it one, and now just now I have designed the new drop down by key UI element, which is binded to a normal context attribute. I don't had context node created. Okay, this one with context node and context attribute, but this one only context attribute, but still I could able to see the output. So in case of keys, you don't have to create, even if you do not create context node, that should be enough. Okay, so creation of node in WebDynpro is not required, attribute is sufficient. Okay, anyway, it is a best practice to create a context node. Okay, now coming to the radio button group by key and drop down by index. This UI element is used to display dynamic drop down values or radio buttons. Okay, elements need to be populated by passing the entries dynamically in coding. We will have to write some code. So here in case of radio button group by index or drop down by indexes, we have created a supply function and then written the coding. When this UI element is used, there will be no option, there will be one option selected defaulted in the radio button list. Okay, always there will be one default selection will be done. Okay, this default selection can be removed by unchecking the checkbox initialization lead selection for the context node. Okay, that I will show you. Now let me just open the application. Okay, now this is the application. Now let me just refresh it. Okay, by default here you will see Bharat has been selected default because the first element has been lead selected. Now if I remove this, if I go to v underscore radio button and I go to context, okay, I go to this context node and I'll just remove the lead selection, initialization lead selection. Now let me just save it and then activate it. Now this is another important interview question, that in case of radio button group by index, if you want to remove the default selection, what do you do? Okay, if you want to remove the default selection, select the node and remove the initialization lead selection checkbox unchecked, so that the default selection will be gone away. Okay, now let me just refresh it. You'll see there is no default selection. Okay, there is no default selection. Now how to read the selected radio button? How to read the selected radio button? Now this is another important thing. Okay, now coming to the layout, now just I'll show you here. This is the radio button group by index UI element. Here you can create on action for this radio button. See, on selection of radio button. Okay, read selected RBI. Okay, now click on transfer event parameters, click OK. Okay, now open this method on select, and here we are going to write the required code. Okay, go to WebDynpro code wizard, click on read, select the context, click on RBI underscore VB type, click OK. When a code has been generated, get attribute method is used to read the attribute value, so activate it. Okay, now just keep a breakpoint here and now just go here. Okay, now I will select some value here, let's say U1. Okay, now it will go to debugging. Yes, LV underscore RBI underscore VB type is empty. Now press F6. Now you'll see selected value U1. I have selected U1, so I got U1 value. Okay, so like this. Now if you say Thomas, now it will go to debugging again. Now you see value is empty. Now press F6. Thomas has come. So like this you can read the selected value from the radio button. You can read the selected radio button value. Now if I press Marcus, now you see this is empty. Now press F6. You see Marcus has come. So likewise you can read the selected radio button value. Okay, so this is what today's session we have discussed about drop down by key, drop down by index, radio button group by key, and radio button group by index. Okay, thank you, bye.